Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast. My name is Ezra, and I'm joined by Caleb Sawyer. How are you guys doing today?
I am doing fantastic. How about you?
I'm
I'm
doing
ready to
great.
go.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a fun week. We've taken a brief hiatus, just because college is crazy, but we're
Oh
back.
yes.
The snow is here, and it's not going to leave. It is absolutely insane.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Waking up every morning to more snow.
to more snow. It's been absolutely insane. At least out in the Midwest here, but maybe that's a little different depending on where you are listening to us. So we have just a couple of news stories today, and then some of us have finished some games, some of us have started some games. So we'll be talking about those. I know you're all expecting us to talk about WandaVision, but I feel very strongly that I actually don't want to talk about anything for like 2 months regarding this show at this point, because I think everyone because I know I have spoiled myself on stuff before that even if I didn't care at the time whether or not it was spoiled for me, I would have appreciated not having it spoiled when I went to actually consume the media. And I think this
Yes.
is a spoiler that everyone deserves to have uh to like witness for themselves, especially if they've been following
Hmm.
anything to do with Marvel for the past 20 years even. Um so with that, we're going to talk about two news stories this week, one good, one bad. Do you guys want to start with the good or the bad?
Well, I guess I kind of think the bad is s- yeah, it don't matter to me actually.
Okay, Sawyer, it's down to you.
Uh, let's start with the bad, just so we can get it out of
Start
the
with the
way.
bad. Get the bad out of the way and then wash
Hmm.
it out with the good. That's always been my philosophy. All right, let's. So we've been following the CD Project Red scenario for three shows at this point. I think.
I
It's
we can
been
we
a
gotta
lot has
look back.
happened.
We gotta look back at the VODs. I swear it's longer than that even.
Oh well, no, we've been talking about Cyberpunk on and off uh for a year,
we
but
we joked last podcast, and I'm pretty sure this was last podcast. We joked last podcast that I'm sure there'll be news when we come back, and I don't think any of
and
us expected this news.
I don't think this news was the news anybody was expecting. So this is
Mm.
directly from CD Projekt Red's Twitter. This was on the 9th of February, so we're about 3 days out from this actually happening. So I'm just reading this as a statement that they put on Twitter. Yesterday, we discovered that we have become a victim of a targeted cyber attack due to which some of our internal systems have been compromised. Uh, I'll leave out those details. We are still investigating the incident. However, at this time, we can confirm that, to our best knowledge, the compromised systems did not contain any personal data of our players or users of our service. Um, and yeah, that's the most relevant information. So don't worry about your like the consumer's personal data. But what we should be worrying about, they did leave a ransom note. And CD Projekt Red did state that they aren't going to sort of negotiate with terrorists in
What a
in a
sentence!
sense.
That's I
Yeah,
can't believe that it's come to this.
yeah. Well, and so there's more after this, but I am going to read the ransom note because it is really funny. At
Oh wait.
exclamation points, hello CD Project, more exclamation points, and not just one, like 15 exclamation points in between the Hello CD project. Your have been epically pwned. We have dumped full copies of the source codes from your Perforce server for Cyberpunk 2077, Witcher 3, Gwent, and the unreleased version of Witcher 3. We have also dumped all of your documents, and this is the important stuff, relating to accounting, administration, legal, HR, investor relations, and more. Also, we have encrypted all of your servers, but we understand that you can most likely recover from backups. If we will not come to an agreement, then your source codes will be sold or leaked online, and your documents will be sent to our contacts in gaming journalism. Your public image will go down the pooper even more, and people will see how poopy your company functions. Investors will lose trust in your company, and the stock will dive even lower. You have 48 hours to contact us. So, whoever wrote that is probably not the greatest writer in all of civilization. But
Nope.
what can you expect? They're
Or they
apparently
may
pretty
be
good at hacking. So that's just the first part. It has come out now 3 days after the fact that the data has been sold for $7 million, I think, was the asking price, and so all of that data has been leaked. There is, there's a bunch of stuff. Not a lot of super big reveals yet. People are still looking over everything. They're still looking over the source code and everything. So, uh, that's where the story is. I'm sure there will be more to come, and we'll definitely tell you about it when it, or over the course of our shows. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to say, I put in the messenger chat, I wouldn't really care if this was just like leaked versions of like games, because I think and even like company memos and stuff like that. Like, I wouldn't really care about that, because that it doesn't like compromise anybody's personal information, and it doesn't put really anybody at risk. It just means that the public is going to see a bunch of stuff that maybe CDPR doesn't want us to see, for better or worse. So I wouldn't really feel all that strongly about this. I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm interested to see what comes out. Obviously, it's unfortunate that they got hacked, but if they were going to get hacked, then whatever. The fact that they also got stuff like the accounting information and legal information and all that stuff puts the people genuinely at risk, the employees at risk for all kinds of things that they weren't at risk for before this. So, if this hacking is in response to the poor launch of Cyberpunk 2077, I would say no, don't do that. And then if you're happy about them getting hacked, don't be, because these are actual people whose lives got, even if just a little harder, because this hacking occurred, and their personal data is now at stake. It's just at
Right.
stake, and there's no good way, especially because they said they weren't going to pay the ransom. There's no way to actually protect them now, and that's a really hard position to be in. I wouldn't want to be anybody who works at CDPR right now, and I hope that all of the employees, everyone who works at CDPR, comes out the other end okay. And I hope that even though they were really shifty during the launch of 2077, and they didn't launch it in a good state anyways, I really hope that even though all of those things are true, I really hope that things look up for them and they are able to just sort of get back to what they were doing before. So I don't know if you guys have any other comments to make about that, but that's basically my feelings on the subject.
I just think it sucks that the people who are going to be affected most by this are just the low-level guys who are just doing their jobs.
Yeah. Who worked on the credit sequence or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like It's just
Yeah,
gonna be
exactly.
somebody who maybe like was like a line producer or something, and now he's gotta file all these different forms just because somebody was petty about the poor launch of Cyberpunk.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that. It's the unfortunate thing is that the people who are going to be affected the most are probably not the targets of the hack, and even though hacking would be bad anyways, it's worse because a bunch of people who had almost nothing to do with the release state of Cyberpunk are going to be the most affected. So yeah, well,
That CDPR can turn it around, because if this guy was upset about the poor launch of Cyberpunk and he wanted it to be better, this is just going to make the recovery or any kind of benefit of Cyberpunk just take
Yeah.
longer.
it's
Like
true.
now, not only
true.
do they have to put out those patches, but now they've also got to deal with locking down security.
Yeah.
And I'm sure employee morale is at an all-time low. So
Imagine
Yeah.
to have to crunch, not for the game itself, but because of all this mess that's going on
man,
other stuff.
I'd be interested to see. Like, obviously CDPR is located in Poland, so I don't know how different their laws are from here. But I'd be interested to see like how that what in terms of like the data leakage, like is that what kind of legal repercussions are going to be for that?
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens, not just on the legal end, but we will get to see a bunch of stuff come out about maybe future plans that CDPR had. So it'll be interesting to see both on the good and bad side of things for CDPR. We'll be interested to see what happens next. But all the best for all of the employees over there, and hopefully leadership is able to protect everybody, and if they aren't, hopefully they reach out to the right people to actually protect everybody. Yeah. So let's move on. Sawyer, a really sort of momentous thing happened in gaming, I think about 2 weeks ago at this point. Do you want to explain what happened with really sort of neat what's the barriers being broken down, I guess, is maybe the best way of putting this.
I don't remember what happened, so I'll sure to talk about it. I don't remember what you wanted to talk about.
Okay, I'll go ahead and explain it. So a couple weeks ago, it was announced that MLB The Show is coming to Xbox consoles. And if you don't know why that is a momentous occasion, it is because MLB The Show is a Sony exclusive franchise, and it has been for a very long time. So, it's kind of like how Microsoft's starting to release a bunch of their smaller games on Nintendo Switch. It's kind of like that, how we're starting to see the advent of all of these companies starting to cooperate, I guess. Yeah, I think it's just super cool. I think hopefully we get to see more of this. I'd be interested in your guys' predictions on like what's the next game that makes the crossover. If it's like a Microsoft game, it's a PlayStation game.
Imagine Halo.
Halo on PS5.
I was just about
Lord.
to say that. I would not, if there was anything that they brought over, I think it would be Halo.
Really? I would really do it now.
In terms of it being like I gotta think about the audience too. Because for example, when they brought Cuphead over to Switch, that made sense because the audience for Switch is your typical platformer or more like kind of, I don't want to say like cutesy style games, but like games that look like Cuphead tend to perform well on the Switch. Games like Halo tend to perform really well on PlayStation, and I think that now I still think it's a very long shot, but I think if there's any major Microsoft franchise that does make the jump, it would be that one as opposed to like something like Gears.
Huh, really? See, I feel like Gears would be almost a perfect fit for PlayStation just because they really like their like big cinematic, like set piece driven franchises.
Yeah.
So
But
I
my
don't know.
reason for that, like, I mean, Gears, I'd love to see Gears on there too. But my
Yeah, I
thing
mean,
for
and exclusives as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, I see what you're
like
saying.
my thinking for Halo over Gears is that while Gears would really fit, I think Halo, no, and kind of what we're hearing about Halo Infinite and how it's going to be much more of a live service oriented game. That to me makes it seem like they'd maybe want to branch out, whereas Gears does have a multiplayer component, but it's not really a live service kind of game, if that makes sense. Like it's
Yeah.
like Halo Infinite seems like it's going to be very Destiny like, which is kind of ironic considering Halo started with Bungie. But I think it's. I mean,
Yeah.
I still think it's a very long shot, but if anything like major did, I could see that. Now on the PlayStation side, I think the only thing that I could see jumping to PlayStation would be maybe Ratchet and Clank.
Really? Why Ratchet and not something else?
Well, I mean, not to Xbox. I mean to Switch.
Oh, yeah. I could
Oh.
see Ratchet going to Switch. That makes sense. I think
Yeah.
I mean, I think basically all of the like early 2000s Sony mascots could go basically anywhere and I wouldn't be surprised.
That's true.
Yeah.
Ratchet probably has the lowest chance just because Sony seems invested now cuz they weren't for a little while. But now they seem like, hey, yeah, no, we've got something good happening with Ratchet now, so we'll keep them exclusive. I think is probably the thinking.
I think maybe Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Spider-Man would make sense actually.
I
You
would
know.
have thought so before they bought Insomniac. Is the only thing.
Right.
Mm.
Well,
Like
Yeah.
them, Insomniac makes that a complication.
I think
Yeah, because Sony helped fund it, but yeah, now Insomniac is a first party, so
Oh, and I completely forgot. I think there is a high probability. Well, not necessarily a high probability, but there is a chance that Sunset Overdrive makes it to PlayStation just because of Insomniac.
that makes sense too.
I just don't know how, like, if Microsoft owns the IP or not. It
Yeah.
depends on who owns it.
Yeah. Let's find out. Who owns Sunset Overdrive?
Bethesda. No, I'm just kidding.
Bethesda.
Despite being an Xbox exclusive, Sony now owns the rights to Insomniac Games' Sunset Overdrive, but there doesn't seem much chance of a sequel. That is a very okay. In 2019, it was reported that Sony owns Sunset now, so we
Okay.
could see some like a sequel or a new or maybe like a remaster or something like that for PS5.
I think it would do well.
Yeah, no, I can see it doing pretty well. I feel like Sunset fits Sony's image pretty well, so we'll see. Caleb, do you have any other predictions?
Well, let's see. So going down the list, I still have a hunch something about if they were ever able to do it, maybe Insomniac develops another Marvel property, and
Hmm.
or yeah, no, it's tough because it's a question of like exclusives going over to the other
Yeah.
platform, and it's tough of like, oh, they they own it. Uh, I think well, I think we'll definitely see it more with sports games than anything.
Yeah, I think
So
sports games are the first.
Forza may come over to PlayStation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah, I can see
kill
that.
Gran Turismo in the
Yeah.
process. I'm serious. I think Gran Turismo is probably on its last legs.
Yeah.
I think
Unfortunately.
all those games are on their last legs. But
Yeah.
I can see. I think the real test will be with the Bethesda games,
yeah,
but that's
Yeah.
going to be
Yeah,
the
the Bethesda games are the first like we'll learn. We'll find out where this is going once we have an idea of where Elder Scrolls goes. Because I feel like Starfield is probably far enough in development that it wouldn't
yeah,
they wouldn't necessarily change direction. But yeah, I think Elder Scrolls 6 is the first.
right. Imagine watching the Elder Scrolls 6 reveal trailer and like you see Xbox Game Studios and panic, and then the PlayStation Studio pops up
Yeah.
as a
Yeah, no, it's there's a definite possibility. It is an odd like you do have to consider the fact that a bunch of these studios getting bought up and everything is, you know, what is the best place for all of these games? Is it better for them to be exclusive so that, they sell systems? Because I can bet you a lot of if Fallout 5 gets announced and it's an Xbox exclusive, a lot of people are going to buy an Xbox
Mhm.
for Fallout. And just the same as like a lot of people are probably going to buy an Xbox for Fable. Perfect Dark even is probably going to be a bunch of people's first Xbox console for Perfect Dark. So Xbox seems like they're pushing exclusives really hard, but then every company at this point, aside from Nintendo, has been toying around with putting stuff like Horizon Zero Dawn coming to Steam, like last year is a big deal. So we'll see where this goes. I think MLB is a really interesting case study, but we will find out. I think what Sawyer said is correct. We'll definitely know for sure where this is going when Elder Scrolls 6. Because again, Starfield I think is too early, so I think Elder Scrolls 6 is the first one that we get a definite read on. Like, okay, this is how it's gonna go. And Elder Scrolls 6 is not happening for the next like 4 years, so we've got time. So, yeah, all right. I think that's all of the news.
Yeah.
So, well, it's not all of the news. A lot of stuff is happening. Next week is actually Zelda's 35th anniversary, so that's really exciting. I think that's on the 21st, so not this Sunday from when we're recording, but the next Sunday. So maybe we'll get some Zelda reveals next week. Pokemon Week is happening the week of the 25th, so that's going to be really exciting. So and that's just like a tip of the iceberg. A lot of gaming franchises are actually having their some of their bigger anniversaries this year.
Mhm.
So
bring back the year Luigi.
bring back the year of Luigi, man. It's time for my guy Toad to get the
The year of Toad.
spotlight. The year of Toad.
I want
Please,
year of,
Please.
we had the year of Luigi. Now we need the year of Waluigi.
Wah.
Yeah,
Here,
we'll potentially. There's been a lot of. Oh, we didn't talk about. Did you? Well, there's been a lot of Square Enix news in the fact that Final Fantasy 14 is getting a
Yeah.
DLC in the midst of Final Fantasy 16. Same
Yeah.
same creative team there.
Yeah. Well, I assume that it's the devs behind,
mhm.
like, all of the key devs behind 14 are simultaneously working on 16, but then there's, like, it's split studios, so not all of the people working on
Right.
14 are working on 16. That would be a nightmare.
And being
um,
released in the same presumably the
but
same quarter.
yeah, which would be it'd be absolutely insane. Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, Square Enix seems to be revving up for something. We don't really know.
mhm.
Lots of Final Fantasy VII trademarks. Interestingly, it has I don't know, I wouldn't be able to find an interview for you, but it is interesting that they're talking about 7 Remake as part of FF7 canon instead of talking about it as its own thing. So, all of these trademarks and everything, we'll see where all of that leads.
Right.
And obviously, 7 Remake and 16 are going to be their own thing. Kingdom Hearts is coming to PC, so that's going to be really interesting to see. Really excited for the modders to let me play as all these other characters that I want to play as in KH3. But
I will say Xbox did tweet out something a few hours ago saying hold on, let me I was just looking at it. Oh yeah, is it really the Final Fantasy if it has multiple sequels?
yeah, that makes sense.
It well, it is a long-running joke, but I do not find it coincidence that we are hours from potential news that
yeah,
and plus the exclusivity of FF7R is about to be up
yeah.
for PlayStation. So that's going to be coming on Xbox soon. So but it's interesting that Game Pass tweeted that. Not. So I'm
Yeah.
curious.
That's I didn't realize it was that
Yeah.
one.
I think Xbox is really, really trying to push Game Pass as the Netflix for games.
Yeah.
And I think what they're trying to do, and I don't know if they're necessarily selling everybody on this yet, but what they're trying to do is approach studios and say, hey, launch on Game Pass, we'll treat you really well, we'll pay you for it.
Mhm.
And what you'll get is actually higher sales because people will hear about good reviews for your game and then go out and buy it instead of getting Game Pass. I think that's going to work because I don't see the smartness of the business strategy there, but I think
Yeah. Imagine if it has titles that haven't been like remastered, like say 13 or Crisis Core, or like imagine those
yeah.
being in the Game Pass. Oh boy, I'd be like,
Yeah, and it would and we will have to see. It's definitely
yeah,
not
we're on our tinfoil hats, pure
yeah,
speculation. Like,
lots of theories. I mean, it is basically guaranteed that we're gonna get some kind of next gen upgrade for 7 Remake. Like
mhm.
that seems pretty likely to me. I think part of the issue has been PS4 exclusivity is kind of like, oh, can we put it on PS5? I think is like a legitimate question. So that's going to happen at some point. But other than that, yeah, it's all definitely an unknown. I think I'm really excited for 16, so I'm looking forward to stuff on that. But yeah, I think that's basically all of the news.
I
Um,
know it's a couple weeks back, but we never talked about Resident Evil.
The movie or
yes.
the oh yeah, no the game, yeah, the game had a really big blowout, didn't it? It had the demo came out
Yeah, the demo,
and
they had a new trailer.
new
They had a whole
yeah.
showcase.
Yeah, it was like the Resident Evil 8 day. Have either of you guys played the demo? I haven't played it.
Mm-mm.
I'm probably never going to play an RE game, but
Same.
I haven't played the demo yet. But I
okay.
plan on.
Yeah. I'd be interested to hear your take on the demo cuz I hear it's more of like a graphic showcase than it is a gameplay based demo. So,
They did that same thing for Resident Evil 7 too, with
yeah.
the beginning hour or bedroom or whatever it was called.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I'm interested to hear your take. I'm interested to hear cuz RE8 comes out in like a month, right? So,
It was out in May.
May, okay. Okay, so yeah, kind of a long way away. But yeah. All right, let's move on to topics. Topics. So not news topics, but topics. Um Caleb,
Yes.
you finished
Correct.
Nier Automata, not the original
Yes.
Nier.
No. I'm probably just saving for that for the remake.
Yeah,
And
it's like a
it's like
half
a
step between a
yeah,
remake and a remaster. It's weird.
yeah. Who knows?
But
People said FF7R wasn't going to be that big, and then look where we are at. I mean,
well,
they haven't they haven't really shown much for
yeah.
Replicant, but
They did release a bunch of footage today. I didn't watch a lot of it, but you
mhm,
know, it looks pretty good. I don't know. There's not much to say about it.
right.
I'm gonna play that game mostly because I think I know basically everything that happens at this point,
Hmm.
and I'm basically gonna go to that game to find out if I like Nier as a protagonist or not. Um,
Hmm.
so we'll see. But anyways, you finished Automata. We
Hmm.
haven't really talked about it since. What did you think?
I really enjoyed it. It was it was an experience. The I'll try to keep this as spoiler free as possible for Sawyer, because it is a very special experience. Uh, the the amount of content that I get in this game, I'm really happy about. Um, it's really fun. It has it can be really serious at moments and then can be really funny at other moments. It's really good. The the combat I really enjoyed. So much so that I started to get used to it. With and like really messing up my other games that I'm playing, and like pressing R2 to dodge instead of square, for instance. You know what I mean? Um, so I got pretty used to the combat. I really enjoy um, how it is. It's got a it's got a lot of fun moments. The cast did a great job, um, a wonderful job, and it's funny because there is two FF15 voice actors in there, and like
Yeah.
every time they spoke a line, my head kept going to those characters, um, because yeah, it would be giving it away, especially with the second voice actor. And there could be more, but the those were the two that I spotted. Um,
yeah.
but the it's a fun game. I love the amount of trolling this game does. This game will troll you. Um, it's
It
really
does.
fun. Uh, I streamed the last third of the game. Um,
Yeah, basically.
yeah. With with Ezra. Ezra watched it with me, and he was very interested in my reactions. I gotta say, I really enjoyed streaming it. I kind of wish I streamed it from the beginning, but at the same time, I wasn't sure what I was getting into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that the game doesn't really communicate what it is
Mhm.
until like half an hour in.
Right. And I just wanted to kind of like that game when I had started it, I was just like, I want something that's chill right before I go to classes and stuff. That's kind of like within my own schedule. And then I was like playing it like 6 hours probably a day. um, and that's when that's when Ezra was like, "You gonna stream the last third?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll stream it."
Well, I really wanted to see your reaction to the middle portion
uh-huh.
where everything goes down.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes down in that last third. A lot of
Yeah.
stuff that I did not expect. I will say this plot, while seems predictable at first, it strays away from that, and um, there is some predictability, but it's not as frequent as a normal narrative would be. It's really fun. I enjoyed it. Soundtrack's really great. Um, I I listen to it. It's a good study soundtrack. I've noticed.
Yeah, it's
Um,
good background music.
exactly. It's good background music. Um, it's good to it's good to hear. Um, I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Uh, yeah, I think that's my review of it.
Okay.
It in terms of it got me really excited for learning more about it. Like by the time I finished the game, um, I learned it's interesting because with this game, it has a pretty clear plot, but also there's so much hidden stuff at the same time that it adds a whole other deeper meaning to it. So it's like it's fun to learn more and then go back and say rewatch some stuff for content context, I should say. And it's been fun. I'm enjoying it, and even though this game kind of gives away what happens in the first one because that's what a sequel does. um, it, I'm intrigued to see where it goes. Like within that first one, because I haven't haven't played the first one. Um, I'm assuming I'm playing the remake. I don't know. Probably won't play it like right away, just because it comes out right around when I have real life production stuff going on. So it's like
Yeah.
I might not touch it. um, and 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 I was even telling Ezra the other day. I was like, if there's an FF7 like anything related that comes out in April, um, I'm afraid.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, no, if anything happens with FF7 cuz I don't really care that much about the original Nier.
Mhm,
So like I'm uh yeah, I think FF would take priority over that, but
mhm.
yeah.
I
Um
I will say what I liked about Nier, and this year has been this past year I played a lot of great games, and it was nice to because it was almost at the full circle mark of a full year of like really good games straight, and it was just nice to have that as the final note,
yeah.
and stuff. So they're I'll I'm presuming I'll get back to it. I want to try to actually platinum the game. I know there's a way to without giving it away. There's a way to make it faster. Um,
Yes.
but no, I think I want to try. I at least want to do the DLC like arena fights and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Well, and yeah, it's kind of like Nier is kind of like Kingdom Hearts 2 in that way, where
Mhm.
like if you know what you're looking for, grinding everything and stuff like that is actually not super hard. So
Right.
it's like the level 99 grind is actually pretty easy once you
No.
figure it out.
I never found a problem leveling up in that game. I think
Yeah,
right
no,
now currently I'm like mid 60s. Like I'm like
yeah.
level 63 or 65, so I'm like, you know, a grind wouldn't be that long, I don't think, for that.
No, yeah, and it's not. It's but yeah, it wouldn't actually involve all that much like quote unquote grinding in the same way because it
Mhm.
would just it's like the Cage 2 grind. It's like an hour of your time tops
I
probably.
I will say this game had because I just remembered because we were talking about leveling up. I will say this game had great side missions. I loved to play the side
Yeah.
missions. Anytime one would pop up, I would do. Um, the uh, some are hilarious, some are quite excruciating. Um,
Very disturbing, in fact.
yeah, yeah, and that's why yeah, that I love the side missions. And I think what's interesting about the side missions is I feel like if you don't play the side missions, the effects on the ending
Yeah.
doesn't hit. Or just
I think
even the plot doesn't hit.
well,
'Cause
there's a lot of stuff that comes out of left field in the
mm,
ending that is actually like hard teased in side quests. Like
right.
there's a like there are two side quests that I can think of that really contextualize stuff that happens at the end of the game. And again, I
Mm,
won't give them away because it's something that you should experience for yourself. But yeah, there's I think the side quests are I think what's interesting about the side quests is you definitely don't need them to
mm,
like like they would make sense in the ending, I think, even without those like the ending would make sense without them, but
yeah, I just
they do contextualize it.
right. I would feel that just going to the ending, um, there wouldn't be much um payoff, if that makes sense. Um, in a sense of like um oh, it just wouldn't be motivated as strong, I
Sure.
feel. And especially when it comes to character choices, because there's a lot of character development in these side missions. And actually, you, this is going to go on, going to be me talking about side missions for a bit and just video games in general. A good side mission to me is something that, well, not necessary because it's skippable. A good side mission, though, does further character development and like
Yeah.
and 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 is fun. Like you get rewarded out of it, um, and unique side missions, bringing you to new locations and stuff. Those are what ideally I look for when I play any game with side missions. Uh, just for example, Final Fantasy 15 had some okay side missions. Some were better than others. The dungeon crawling was great, for example. Um, Although kind of repetitive at times, but it was fun to go through. You know, Basically, I find side missions that are like help me, I broke my leg.
Yeah.
Carry this wagon to exposition, and and here's a golden cloak. You know what I mean? Like, those type of side missions, well,
They can
could
be
be
fun.
fun. They're really
Did
just
somebody
there to
Assassin's
thicken
Creed?
the time. What was that?
I said, did somebody say Assassin's Creed?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm thinking of when it comes to case in point, Assassin's Creed. Literally, I skip all the side missions. They're
That's exactly what I thought of when you said that. I was like, go here and assassinate this guy, or can you help me carry this box to my house, or something like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Just the kind of filler, the Ubisoft filler.
And I prefer side missions that are rewarding for story, even though they may not further it. They give lore, or you know what I mean.
Yeah,
That's what I look for in side quests, and I that's why I enjoy Ghost of Tsushima's side quest, because there was lore and exploring, and all that kinds of stuff. I haven't finished Ghost of Tsushima, admittedly. Um, I'll get to that game at some point. I promise you, I love this game. It's not like I'm not trying to avoid it. Um, it's just sometimes I'm like, I want to speed run KH for 8 hours straight and call it a speed run. You know what I mean? There's just some
yeah,
games that, like, I just want to sit down and like just randomly
Yeah.
play and not, you know. But that that's so when I had started Nier, I did with the intention of playing them both at the same time, and then
Yeah. I
and then
remember that.
yeah, I never got around to Ghost because I was too focused on Nier, which goes to show you how much I enjoyed Nier, because as I've said plenty of times before, I really like Ghost of Tsushima. So that's kind of my review.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
I was just
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna mention you were talking about the side missions. And I've had like usually being the completionist that I am, I
Mhm.
suffer through them on a lot of games. But sometimes I tend to skip them. The series that when the new remastered version comes out that I'm gonna replay, I'm gonna make sure I do the side missions because I remember back when I played the Mass Effect games, most of the side missions I just skipped, and I realized going back like years later that there are good chunks of like character development and story that I just missed out on by not
Yeah,
doing.
that's not surprising.
Right.
So I need to go back and do those. So I see what you mean by like you skip side missions and you miss out on crucial details.
That that's also, you know, yeah, that I can't even tell you how many games I've done that too, and like go back and maybe I'll watch a stream of somebody playing the game and then be like, "Oh, that was fun. That was oddly funner than I had expected it to be," because the first 3 hours of the game, when it was forcing you to do side missions, didn't feel that really rewarding. You know what I mean? Uh, because that's what I find weird about video games, is that they will force you within the first 3 to 4 hours of a game to do side quests and stuff. And what, not all of them, but there's a good chunk of games that are like this. And I always feel tedious doing them sometimes. You know, again,
Yeah.
case in point, Assassin's Creed. Like, I played
Being
Origins.
forced to do optional content never feels good.
Right. Origins was really bad with this, to where I just kind of gave up on the game. I was just kind of frustrated. Like, here's the thing: Origins got rave reviews, um, because of how different it was, and it was quite different. Believe me.
Yeah.
Going from all these other games, but like The reason why I stopped playing Origins was because I just didn't want to keep doing these side quests. Like, yeah, that was kind of my feeling.
Like my problem is that like all of these things. I mean, you guys know I've expressed this a lot on this show, but I play games usually for the balance between story and gameplay. And my problem that I've had with Assassin's Creed is it constantly feels like the two sides are at odds with itself. Like the stories are interesting, even if they are sometimes not as planned out as they should be, but they're always interesting. And but at the same time, the gameplay feels the need to every time the story is getting interesting, roadblock you and say, "Oh well, you got to go help Da Vinci carry this box of feathers from this house to the next house." Some nonsense like that, and then you'll get like a cliffhanger. It's like, "Oh, it's getting good," and then it'll be like, "Well, you need a high enough armor, and you got to go get this." And I'm just like, just let me experience the story you're trying to tell without forcing me to go do all this other. It's basically a way of padding things out. And honestly, when it comes to Assassin's Creed, if we're going with that example, half the time I think the experience of the story would be better if you just watched all the cutscenes rather than playing the game. Like it sucks because the experience that you get of being this master assassin and this meticulously recreated historical setting is always amazing. It's just the fact that ever since probably Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, Ubisoft has felt the need to just shove as much things as they can into it, which content is good, but it ends up hindering the experience because it's just so overblown with stuff that there's no focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Brotherhood didn't have all that filler, it would be the amount of content that you get. It would be the amount of a DLC.
Yeah.
Case in point.
Like it's just like if you took the only one. I mean, Assassin's Creed 1. I know I'm getting off topic here, but Assassin's Creed 1 had it did have a repetitive structure, but at least it felt like it was telling the story it wanted to tell. Assassin's Creed 2 did to an extent. It's really just when it was really just, oh, you have this, but if you want to, you can take on these optional contracts and collect these feathers. But it wasn't intrusive outside of like 2 missions. Then you get to Brotherhood and then Revelations, and especially Assassin's Creed 3, where it feels like the first 5 hours of the game is a tutorial on how to do side missions. Like, I remember when I was doing my marathon of them last fall, I remember it was like, oh great, it's that time when you start an Assassin's Creed game where the first 5 hours are teaching you how to play the game that's been the same tutorial for the last 10 years. Like,
yeah.
all right, rant over.
Yeah, well, Caleb, did you have any other thoughts on Nier?
Well, it's just, I think that it's a fun game, and honestly, we don't know. I think it's possible, but I think Ezra has been very clear that it's probably not gonna. I would like to see some form of a sequel, whether it's directly related or not.
Well,
I think
we're gonna get a new Nier game at some point.
Oh yeah,
but whether or not it's Automata or something else, that's a whole different
heck,
thing.
it could be a prequel for all we know.
Could be. Although I say that.
Oh
but,
yeah, but yeah. What you were telling me, maybe.
Yeah, I mean the thing about the Nier universe is that the games are their own thing, but then also there's a lot of like supplementary content out there. Like there were like 2 stage plays written for Automata. There are a ton of short stories. So it's yeah, I mean my thing is that I think the world of Nier is going to continue on some level, but the question is going to be more about whether or not like these characters are coming back in some form, or if there are going to be new characters. It's just a whole. Uh, we have to wait and see. Basically, it's
Mhm.
probably going to be another 2 or 3 years before we
Oh, for
see
sure.
like a new and a true like console-based new entry in the Nier franchise.
Right,
Um,
especially with Replicant being right
yeah,
around the corner. That
yeah,
that team was definitely probably focused on that. So,
yeah, definitely. Well, and Taro himself probably doesn't work
mhm.
in um like he's not Nomura. He probably doesn't make like 3 games at once.
Yeah.
He does it one at a time, and he's working on the mobile game right now. So yeah,
Oh.
we'll have to wait and see on that. And I'll refrain from making too many comments because I've talked about it a bunch before. But you all know that Nier is or Automata is basically my favorite game.
Mhm.
So yeah, and you could listen to my thoughts on that in previous episodes.
That's
All right,
why I played it.
so
Like, honestly, if it
yeah,
wasn't for Ezra's recommendation on the podcast, I
I've
would
been pushing it super hard.
I would not have played it. Like,
Yeah,
that's what I like about this podcast. Is like it's really us talking about stuff that we've played and like
yeah,
played or watched and recommending it. And
yeah. Well,
admittedly, I could do better at like following up on it, but like I definitely do put them on my list and stuff, and eventually I get to it. Might take a couple
yeah,
years, but I'll get to it. I, you know.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that like we come together for it and share what we've seen, and we get to sort of hear back, even if it's like months after the fact, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I think that's a pretty cool aspect of it. Um, but so what I'm going to do next is not recommend something actually. Um, so I finished Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. I finished that probably like 4 weeks ago at this point. It's been a while since I finished it, so I've had time to let it cook. I haven't really gone back to it after I finished it. I did like a little bit afterwards, but I haven't really gone back to it, and I'm probably not going to. Um, so where do I start? um, so I think um, so I want to start. I just want to put a disclaimer at the top of this. I really enjoyed the first Hyrule Warriors game. I thought it was uh I thought it was a really fun, not the greatest thing. Muso games have a sort of the limitation of like the shallow, or not shallow, but not super deep combat combined with the uh not all that interesting sort of level design uh and like enemy design makes it can make it really repetitive. But I thought I thought Hyrule Warriors was a lot of fun. I thought the story fit really well with what they were trying to do, because they weren't trying to tell a really impactful Zelda story, or change the lore in any significant way or anything like that. um and I have enjoyed other Muso style games as well. Like I played the Fate Extella game that came out, and I thought it was a good time. I thought Fire Emblem Warriors was a lot of fun. Um, I think I'm forgetting the other one that I've played. I feel like I've played another one. So I just wanted to say I think it's easy for somebody to criticize Hyrule Warriors for being a warrior, or Age of Calamity for being a Warriors game, and I think, you know, if you don't like the Warriors stuff, then that's fair. But I am not inherently biased against it. And in fact, if done right, I quite enjoy the Warriors loop. And for the first, I would say 6 missions. I don't remember how many chapters there are, how many main story missions there are. For the first 6 of them, I was really enjoying myself. I thought, you know, it doesn't run particularly well, but the Breath of the Wild engine doesn't run super well anyways. But you know, I was having a good time. I was having a good time playing as characters that I never thought would be a playable character in a video game. I was enjoying the sort of like the concept of like the prequel story and stuff like that. So I was enjoying myself. And then at some point I started to notice that I was fighting the same bosses over and over again
Oh, I
and
hate that.
not doing anything else. So like in the original Hyrule Warriors, you would have, you know, at some point maybe you would have like 3 or 4 bosses spawn, and maybe they would all be the same, but they would all be pretty easy to kill, and you just kind of move along with your day, and you'd go back to like capturing bases or and you know, killing like little mini bosses or stuff and stuff like that. And um and I never really got bored of it because I enjoy the sort of mass destruction combat loop that Dynasty Warriors has, so I just had a good time with it. I didn't think it was especially deep, but I wasn't being forced to do stuff that I didn't want to do too much, so I just kind of coasted and had a good time. With Hyrule Warriors, although they made, I think, some pretty neat gameplay changes, with the addition of the runes that you have from the first game used as attacks that counter enemy attacks. I think it's interesting. So like you'll be fighting a boss and they'll do a move and like a symbol will appear over their head that signifies one of the runes that you have to use that will directly counter that attack. And so I thought that was pretty cool because it was like a cool sort of resource management thing. There are also elemental attacks that you can use to like there are like ice, fire, and lightning variations of all of the boss enemies, or not all of the boss enemies, but a lot of the boss enemies. So you can like use these elemental attacks to stun them and do a lot of damage to their like I don't know what it's called, but it's their guard meter that if you destroy it, then you will do a pretty big attack and do a lot of damage to them. So you know, that stuff I thought was all pretty cool. I thought it was like cool additions that allowed for interesting combo scenarios and stuff like that. My main issue was I started to fight the same bosses and do the exact same thing over and over again. And in this instance, it felt like at some point the devs behind Age of Calamity said, "Hey, we made some neat bosses. Let's put them everywhere. Let's make every task the player has to do to fight like 3 or 4 of these bosses at different parts of the map, and then after they're done fighting those bosses, give them a new boss to fight." And and the over-reliance on boss characters in a gameplay loop that doesn't really support it created in me it felt really tedious. It felt like I was being impeded for no reason, like they were telling me you're not allowed to go any further until you do all of these things that you really don't want to do. And I stuck with it. But I'll say I think the final boss is fine. I think the final boss is probably one of the better bosses in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But after fighting all of these enemies that just had too much health and didn't take enough damage and all of that stuff in a game that is not like Kingdom Hearts, where there are a lot of options and fighting enemies is super fun and the combat is super interesting. When you're not that and you put so many boss enemies in front of me, I'm just not going to have a good time. I'm just not. I just didn't feel like I was making progress enough. It just felt super tedious. A lot of the main story missions felt really tedious, which is not what you want out of an action game. And not really what you want in any video game. Even if you're a turn-based RPG, you don't want your combat to feel tedious. And I think but I could forgive that, right? I could forgive the over-reliance on bosses. I think it's something that I could forgive about the game on its own, because I think there are enough things to like about it that it wouldn't necessarily hinder the game. I think the game is beautiful. I think the characters are all very well realized. I think they all do basically what you would expect them to do based on how they appear in the original game in Breath of the Wild. So I can forgive the combat, but so this is where I have to ask: do you guys mind me spoiling some stuff for the story? Because the story is where I take major issue with Age of Calamity.
I haven't played Breath of the Wild yet either, so maybe
It won't
not a ton.
spoil Breath of the Wild itself.
Mm-hmm.
My issues with it won't spoil Breath of the Wild itself. But if you don't want me to spoiling this game, I can tiptoe around it.
I would say just nothing major. If it's like minor stuff, I don't really.
So, so the conceit of Age of Calamity, as it was sold to me, was that, hey, you're gonna get to see what happens before basically everything that happens before Link wakes up in the Shrine of Resurrection at the beginning of Breath of the Wild.
Right.
And
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
As well.
And for the first, and I was really excited for that. I think that's like, hey, yeah, no, get some really neat perspective on what happened before, maybe some cool character moments, or just stuff like that. That like, hey, this is a neat idea. I think it's perfect. I thought it was perfect for a Warriors game. Sense to me. At the beginning of the game, there's this little robot that travels from the future to the past and lands in the time period the Age of Calamity takes place in, so 100 years before Breath of the Wild. And so that's your first hint that maybe they're not really doing the prequel story that you thought they were doing. And for most of the game, you're kind of led to believe like, oh yeah, no, it's still like a prequel story, but maybe there's like, maybe this time traveler is here for stuff in the sequel, or stuff like that. I felt like I'll just run with it. And then they start making some pretty major changes to what happens. Like, because like they do tell you what happened in Breath of the Wild. Like there are memories that fill in the gaps for you, so you know basically everything that happens to all of these characters by the time Link goes to sleep in the Shrine of Resurrection and then wakes up 100 years later.
Mhm.
And those things start to change, and you're like, and I was like, oh, well, okay. And then the game just ends. And like it's a triumphant victory and everything. It's like the ending of a basic Zelda game.
Mhm.
And I felt like and I really didn't know how to feel, cuz on one hand I can appreciate trying to tell your own story. I'm not averse to like time travel stuff. Like that stuff that it didn't bother me conceptually.
Mhm.
My issue is that I felt like the most effective way for this game to end would be to just hard commit to Link going to sleep in the Shrine of Resurrection and end it on that, like, you know, everything in Breath of the Wild is going to happen. So what happens in Age of Calamity is like it gives you really effective context, right?
Right.
So like that felt like the best scenario for me. And I don't know, I think calling it false advertising is a bit much. Like it's the same like I wanted to I wanted to play as Snake, why am I playing as Raiden stuff. That's like you could call it false advertising if you wanted to, but it's not really. So like I don't think it's like
Mhm.
that bad. But I think unless there's like some really big payoff for the sequel. Like it turns
Mhm.
out the sequel is like if it turns out the Link from Twilight Princess is in the sequel or something
Mhm.
crazy like that, then maybe I'll look back on Age of Calamity's ending and be like, okay, maybe it was worth it. But right now, without any real knowledge of what's happening in the sequel, I don't have uh I just don't feel like there's, for one thing, Breath of the Wild story is not a masterclass in video game storytelling.
Mhm.
Like it's fine, it works, but it's not the greatest thing known to man. So like to like make this like super big change to the canon or to whatever happens, again, we don't really know what's like the implications for this,
Mhm.
but to make that change, it just felt super off to me. It felt like the direction of the game went in the wrong direction. And I I really hate that this is my, like, those two things are my main criticism, the combat or the boss fights and the story, cuz there's genuinely a lot to like about Age of Calamity, but those two things just really give me a lot of hang-ups about it. And it again, it as somebody who really likes the original Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors and other Muso stuff, I walked away feeling like the game missed the mark. And I'm genuinely disappointed by that because it's not a game I wanted the game to be really good. I was really excited for it. I thought it would be a lot of fun. Um and it has its, and there is fun to be had. I don't want to say that the entire thing is just totally tedious and without merit, but those my big concerns with the story that didn't really feel like it hit the mark, along with the over reliance on bosses. It just
Mhm.
felt really off. And again, I think the original Hyrule Warriors story does everything it needs to. Like it felt super effective at being just like this fun tribute to everything that makes Zelda Zelda
Mhm.
inside the shell of a Warriors game. Where when and then Age of Calamity felt like it tried to do both. Let's do a fun tribute to Breath of the Wild
Mhm.
and also tell this like interesting prequel story, and it didn't really succeed at doing either of those. And I just ended up feeling disappointed. And that again, that's a really big shame for me. I think if those are things that don't really concern you, like if you think Warriors games need more boss fights, then this is the game for you. Like so I'm not going to say I think these are totally subjective um points to make about Breath of or Age of Calamity. So I can understand why it was as well received as it was, but for me it just didn't hit the mark. And again,
Mhm.
I was pretty I was disappointed by that. So,
Well, it
yeah.
is interesting to have Hy- Hyrule Warriors as a I'm 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 calling it a bridge title.
Yeah. And
Um,
maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's the like
right.
because the big theory right now is maybe Breath of the Wild 2 takes place in the timeline of Age of Calamity and not
Mhm.
the original Breath of the Wild. In which case, that actually makes sense to me because
Mhm.
the ending of Breath of the Wild, like you know what they're going to do, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot more to like explore in the
Mhm.
land of Hyrule. Um, so you know there it could be that it's a
Yeah,
bridge
like
theory
I
game.
know I know Breath of the Wild 2 is very imminent. Like
Yeah.
we're talking maybe a year to 2 years.
Well,
Because
maybe even this year.
yeah, yeah, that's actually what I was more meaning. Um yeah, I was thinking 2021, 2022-ish type thing, not necessarily. Yeah. Um so that yeah, I'm pretty sure that's coming soon because that was revealed a couple years ago before even Hyrule was even a thing.
Yeah.
And I very much think that it I would be willing, like, as someone who's I've been wanting to get into the Zelda series for a while. I've been intrigued by it. I remember playing uh, Ocarina over at my friend's house. I never actually played through the whole game or anything, or even, but I played moments, and enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Um, and it always got me intrigued. I was curious as to what the story, is about. So I've always been wanting to, at some point, go through that series. I've even talked to you before, Ezra, that like Breath of the Wild is probably very soon, a couple of times, and
Yeah.
my brother has the game, so literally all I can do is just play it when I want. It's just a matter of, do I want to start with Breath of the Wild or do I want to go through the actual series? And with going through the actual series, can I have would the Switch get me through the whole series, or would I have to get another console for it? Because here's the thing, I don't my evolution of Nintendo consoles don't usually last. um,
Yeah.
my Nintendo consoles go from Game Boy to Game Boy Advance, I should say, to the Wii to the Switch. So I skipped the DSs in
Yeah.
in complete.
And in fairness, most of the Zelda handheld games aren't like super important.
Mhm.
I can think of like one that everyone would tell you is probably the best one and the only one that really matters. The
Mhm.
other ones are probably like take them or leave them. But yeah, I see what you mean, and I think I mean my perspective is that the Hyrule Warriors games are for Zelda fans
Mhm.
more than they are for like newcomers,
Mhm.
and Breath of the Wild is the newcomers game. Like I think um like that game brings it down to fundamentals in such a big, or not fundamentals, but it's such a different game from the other 3D Zelda games that starting with it makes, how do I put this? Starting with it is probably like one of the better moves actually, just because the other games are so different that you're not kind of waiting around for Breath of the Wild in
Mhm.
an odd way. Even though I think a bunch of the 3D Zelda games are super super good. So yeah. And I think I will say I think Age of Calamity doesn't like ruin Breath of the Wild for me. Um just because I didn't get to see something I wanted to see doesn't make the rest of it invalid to me. So and I think, and I'm just one opinion out of many. Like I really didn't want to end up talking about Age of Calamity and being super negative about it.
Mhm.
But I did feel like I haven't heard my concerns voiced, or I've heard the story concerns voiced. I know that that is something a lot of people are talking about, but I haven't heard my concerns about the gameplay voiced, and I felt like it's worth discussing. It's worth bringing up just to let everybody know, everybody who would listen to this who might want to play the game. If you don't want to play a ton of boss fights,
Mhm.
then don't play this game. Or if you don't want to play a bunch of like warriors bosses, because that's the main sticking point. I'll play Kingdom Hearts bosses all day, every day. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's a shame. Yeah. Sorry, did you have any like questions or anything about Age of Calamity? Anything you wanted to know?
No, I'm trying to stay relatively vague on it because I still,
Okay.
like Caleb mentioned, I still want to go through and do a full playthrough of the series.
Yeah.
But
And
because I've only
hopefully
ever,
we get that Zelda collection this year.
yeah, hopefully it's more complete than Mario All Stars.
I don't know.
Ooh.
I don't know. Uh,
But I think, like for Zelda, I played a good chunk of the original. I played probably maybe about 2 to 3 hours of Link to the Past. I played a couple hours of Ocarina, but I didn't get very far. I liked it. Like all these games I liked, but I've never finished a Zelda game. So I'm hoping that maybe I can take this summer and actually dive in. But as I've mentioned numerous times before, my backlog of games is immense, and
Yeah.
2021 is already a mega year for video games anyway.
yeah. The amount of gaming anniversaries this year is staggering. Like I'm not even listing them all, but
Mhm.
we've got like Zelda is having its 35th, Metroid is on its 35th, F-Zero is on its 35th, so people are holding out for that one. Um Sonic is on his 30th, Persona is on its 25th. Pokemon is also on its 25th. That's just 6 off of the top of my head. There are probably more.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because the Genesis is 1991, and so it's
Oh,
not
that's
just
true.
Sonic's 30th, it's the Genesis's 30th. Like there are so many games that launched on the Genesis that it's a crazy year for games. And that's not including all of the other games that are just going to get released because it's time to release them. So yeah, it is a monumental year for games. We'll see if anybody comes out alive, or if all of these franchises just die. They won't, but yeah, it's definitely like 2021. Not only do you have to like try to play the old games, but there are so many new games coming out that it's going to be pretty crazy. Speaking of relatively new games, Sawyer, you mentioned you've been playing some newly released DLC. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So the funny thing is, the words newly released in that sentence are debatable.
That's true. That's true.
So I realized after a couple of days, I was like, wait a minute, wasn't there a DLC for the Avengers game? And I was like, oh yeah, they have Kate Bishop. And I realized, I was like, oh yeah, this came out in like November.
Maybe it was like early December.
Something like that. And it was, I remember I started playing it last night. I played a little bit more of it today before we started recording. Man, the Avengers, like, okay, I don't even know where to start. So
oof. That's what you say. Oof.
Yeah, it's this game. I feel like everything that all of the feedback that everyone has been giving this game, constructive or not, it feels like they're just going in the opposite direction.
Oh my god!
Like the people are like, all of these heroes fight way too similar, like they all feel the same, and then their solution is, let's make two different versions of Hawkeye as the first DLC characters. I'm like, I question that reasoning. But so far, if I'm talking specifically, because I've gone in depth before on my issues with the Avengers game, but the Kate Bishop DLC does really nothing that I've noticed to change it. Like, it's still go to this reskinned base that you fought in 1,000 times on the initiative mode. Go here, beat up a bunch of robots, and then you'll get a short cutscene of, we've got this guy in jail, now go beat up these 3 generators or something. It's the same loop, and they intersperse little bits of story here and there that are like the only reason I'm even bothering to play. But it's just that they've like, they're like, oh look, we got a new character, there's new levels, you guys like the story, but at the same time, it just feels like, you know, those early like first 2 expansions they did to Destiny 1 back in like 2015, 2016.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Where it was like, oh, we
I
added new content, but it's like a handful of small raids or something like that. That's what this feels like. Is it's, hey, you've got, finally you asked for it, here's new content, but it's more of the same. They just gave you a handful of cutscenes and a new character. And I like playing as Kate Bishop, and I think the core combat, I enjoy beat 'em up style games. Like, my issues with the game really come down to, I think the environments get way too repetitive. The AI is not smart, and it feels like the game is constantly at odds with itself. Like, there's a good story and good characters and voice acting in this game. The problem is it's being shoved into a game style that is not built for it.
Yeah.
No, it's
like,
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, it's the nature of the live service aspect. If you stripped all of that out, you'd have a really good like base game here. Like, it's not going to rival Spider-Man, like Marvel Spider-Man, and it's not going to rival the Arkham games. But it would be a really neat base level Avengers experience with some likable characters. And I think if they wanted to do a store like Battlefront did, where you just buy some cosmetics, I'd be fine with that. I mean, it's a comic book based game. These heroes have been around for like 70 years.
Yeah,
you could
there's
sell
so many costumes.
forever. Yeah, but instead they decide to focus on this loot and gear system that is the most convoluted, complicated, boring system in this game. Like every time I like the story is interesting. I did enjoy it and I liked the characters, but it's the same problem I mentioned earlier with the Assassin's Creed is the game itself betrays the story they're trying to tell. If you stripped out the gear stuff, I could not. I've played several hours of this game, unfortunately. If you asked me to explain the gear system, I still would not be able to explain how it works. There's way
right.
flashing numbers and power-ups and arrows and things. I just the menu just goes gear, cosmetics, power level, character card, and I'm like, just give me a progress tree to level up my character and use why does there need to be a character level and a power level? I still don't understand the difference. Why am I gathering XP if I have to have a power level of whatever from gear to launch a mission in the first place? What does the character level even matter for? It boggles my mind. And I'm like, you have the IP to one of the biggest franchises in the world right now. And your idea was to just make a Destiny clone?
Exactly. It really is. And, I called it exactly how these DLCs would go. And it's sad to hear because
yeah, it is unfortunate.
Yeah.
There is hope in this game, and I do think the fact that they've stepped back and delayed the second Hawkeye DLC is a somewhat of a good sign. Just the fact that they're we can't just make the same thing again. So I do think that's good. We also have no idea what's happening with the supposed Spider-Man DLC that's happening, or we're supposed to get a next-gen update, but that's been delayed indefinitely. We don't even have a date for that. So I would like to see more because I do think there is a good base here. The problem is this desperately is a game that is in need of a 2.0 version.
Yeah.
If they strip out some of the campaign itself, for the most part, was good. Towards the end, there's a lot of those random encounters, but if it was just a campaign and they added in a little bit of a campaign every a short little additional campaign every 2 months, month and a half, and then just had you buy cosmetics, or you upgraded it through, or you get credits through gameplay and you use those credits to unlock things on your, basically the character card is almost kind of like a battle pass, except you can just pay for the credits to buy the tiers, which is weird, but if they just stripped out this nonsense gear system and gave us environments that are different from the same 5 environments I've been seeing forever, you've got a good base combat system, you've got good characters, you've got an interesting enough story. It's just that the game you built around the story and the combat is just incredibly tedious and doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and is just flat out it's literally nothing else than just a Destiny clone. I'm surprised people weren't even more mad about this game than they were about Battlefront 2. Battlefront 2 may have been predatory in its fact that it was, I guess, selling or basically charging you to play the game. But Avengers is basically just trying to say, hey, you just bought this game to keep it around forever. And it doesn't feel like it was ever intended to be a complete game at launch. More so of just, we're going to add famous faces and hope that keeps you coming back. When, okay, if I'm being honest, when they added Spider-Man, that is gonna keep me coming back. But I can't imagine that there will be any reason. I mean, I'm in my progress through playing through the Hawkeye or Kate Bishop DLC right now. I found myself as I go through playing the story bits, but any of this side loot content or dungeon crawling or anything like that, I've just been bypassing it. Like, artists will come up on your comms and be like, there's a rare chest nearby, and I'll just keep like running the other direction because I just don't care.
Yeah, it's similar to I had that feeling with the beta when they would say that, and I just like I just want to
Well,
play the
and
mission.
it doesn't matter is the thing. Like, if
Right.
if the gear was tied into your cosmetics, then maybe I would actually care. But the gear is just arbitrary numbers that flash across the screen. And every time I pick up gear, every 15, 20 minutes, once my relatively limited amount of slots opens up, which that's another thing. In a game that is completely in combat is completely based around you picking up loot after you defeat them, why are there only like 9 slots for gear when you pick up maybe 3 pieces of gear every encounter, and there's an encounter every 5 minutes? I don't understand that. But going into my menu and getting rid of the 3 lowest number pieces of gear every 20 minutes, go on to combat, and then just upgrade. I'm glad they added a button that just says equip best gear because I don't want to have to hunt through because I couldn't care less.
Oh, they added that.
Oh
in.
man.
That's
Oh
good.
man.
I think
Yeah,
That's
it's
a sign.
Yeah, I just wish that if I was to make a wish list for this game, it's give us different environments. I know that's more expensive, but Battlefront gave us numerous different planets over the course of a couple of years, and they were all incredibly varied. Felucia didn't look like Scarif. Scarif didn't look like the Death Star, or I guess that wasn't in Battlefront 2. But you know what I mean? Like, it was
right.
different locales and environments, and there was plenty of skins. This game has been out since September? I'm pretty sure it was September. It's been out since September. We've gotten one new character in November and a couple of missions to go with them in the same environments that we've been seeing since September.
And
Yeah.
and what's
Like, how many times can I beat up robots on this like Siberian like platform before I get sick of it? It's like you have desert, you have snow, and you have the city, and you're gonna fight in those same 3 things forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
What's really worrying to me is I know this game might honestly, here's the thing. This bombed heavily.
Oh yeah.
For Square. Literally, if
Yeah.
it wasn't for FF7, Square would be a different company right about now. That's how bad it bombed.
Yeah.
And what's worrying is if you're not having successful DLC content, and obviously we're already seeing the effects of it already being delayed and stuff. That is a good way for things not to finish, and that's worrying to me because at least with Battlefront 2 they were able to recover. I don't know if even Avengers can even recover at this point.
I seriously want it to recover, and I think there is a base there in which it could. The problem is that they're just not doing anything.
Right.
Like, Battlefront, relatively, like, the core aspects and problems, like, they fixed the bugs. Yeah, like, my playthrough really had any problems with bugs. But it's the bugs were not even really my biggest problem. Like, I could have dealt with a handful of bugs if it meant that there was a enjoyable game in it. It just is. It's not a bad game. It is just so mediocre that it feels like a game that it feels soulless. I think is the term I would use. Like, there was no, like, the campaign. It feels like the people who made the campaign story and cutscenes and all that were a completely different division than who made the rest of the game.
That could be the case.
there's like a lot of interesting glimmers of like greatness in the campaign, but then you go into this Avengers Initiative kind of like endless post game content that unfortunately kind of creeps its way into parts of the campaign, and I think like some of the decisions they made just baffle me. Like Battlefront 2, by this point, they already stripped out the bad loot boxes. They kind of retrofitted a little bit of the like the gear system and the crates and all the credits and all that. They just became like the one currency. They'd added in like content for The Last Jedi and everything. We have gotten one character, and if they wanted to bring people in, why do you start with a character that almost like nobody outside of comic book fans knows? Like, you're gonna do it. Like, just, if you want to get headlines, say, "Hey, Spider-Man is now in the Avengers game, and he's free, and he's got 3 hours worth of content." That's gonna get people in.
Yeah,
Saying,
it'll get people in.
your first DLC is Kate Bishop, a character who hasn't even been introduced into the MCU yet, and as the MCU is most people's gateway into Marvel, that I can't imagine that was people were like, "Oh yeah, I can't wait to go back to play as her." Like it's
No.
and then double down and make another Hawkeye the next character. Like I have nothing against Hawkeye, but like that's your first big swing out of the gate is Hawkeye.
Yeah,
Like
it's so funny because Hawkeye was a meme for one moment in time where Infinity War and the Avengers game wasn't advertising for Hawkeye, and nobody knew what the heck was going on with Hawkeye with Marvel. But
Yeah.
and it if you don't include, all right, I'm gonna go off on a tangent here. If you don't include Hawkeye into your original core team, it's already going to feel weird. And if you're going to use that as your first DLC, it's like, hey, remember that character that you were like, why isn't he in it? Well, he's finally here. Not in the game.
We found him, guys.
But actually in the game now. And doesn't feel that connected of a character. You know what I mean? Like it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think like you're missing a core character, and like that's like let's look at Justice League. That's like not including
Martian
Aquaman.
Manhunter
or Martian
Aquaman.
Manhunter. Yeah. I did say like with Justice League, I found it weird, the movie, that both Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter weren't even included in that movie because I felt like those two are pretty big
integral
players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We also haven't seen the Snyder Cut yet, so we don't know. Yeah, so that's one thing.
But
Ryan Reynolds in the Snyder Cut.
Right. But that would be like, hey, here's Justice League. 2 months later, here's 10 more minutes of the film with this character that you never got to see. It's not going to have that big of an impact,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with that.
Now,
oh,
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think they're a good chance. I think the one that they should have come out of the gate with. I mean, if Spider-Man wasn't multi-platform, I would have said. If he was going to be multi-platform, I would have said that. Which makes the decision to lock him to PlayStation all the more strange. That he's like one of the biggest Marvel heroes, and they locked him to one platform. It's a really dumb decision.
The only justification I could see is that he's the Spider-Man from Spider-Man 2018. Like, because if that's the case, then that's a Sony exclusive Spider-Man, and that's just how it's gonna stay. But yeah.
Like the one they could actually use, like if they just, I think Black Panther honestly would be their best option here.
I agree.
Probably.
Black Panther is a well-known, well-loved character who would gain a lot of traction and momentum. It would bring in a very different. I think you could have a lot of different gameplay moves with him because he's much more acrobatic. So you could add a lot more gameplay in with him. And assuming that he brings Wakanda with him, that's an entirely new environment that you could be
Exactly.
fighting in. It wouldn't just be the same aim labs over and over. So
Yes.
that's the one that they. Okay, Square, you can take it. Right? Yeah, you can take that. I don't. It's free. Like
It's free for free. It's free.
Yeah.
Free ideas.
I hope that this game can turn around. It's just a bunch of strange decisions, and we've still not gotten really any fixes for anything. I think if we're on my wish list, I think it's heroes that are big Marvel players, but are going to feel different in terms of combat.
Mhm.
A variety of different locations and mission objectives rather than just go to the thing and punch it. I want there to be more gameplay. And making either stripping it out entirely or making the gear system actually make sense and fit within the game. Because the core loop right now of just beat up a bunch of dudes, get gear, and then just find a way to upgrade it is just so incredibly tedious that it doesn't feel rewarding. It just feels like you gotta. It feels like you're doing math homework. Like I got okay, now I gotta go to my menu, and now I gotta I got a power level of 16, but this is a challenge level of 2, and I have to have a power level of 25 to access this mission. And it's like I didn't think I was gonna have to do math to beat up aimbots. Like it's just weird.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I it needs to streamline this game because there's way too much just junk. If they just trimmed it down in terms of the loot system and gear system and all that, and gave us a couple more locations and objectives, I think you'd have a really good game on your hands. It's just held back by the terrible system around
Yeah.
the good story and the good combat.
You know, I just want Crystal Dynamics to not make this game anymore. Just cancel it, be done, and
Yeah.
then go and make like an Iron Man game or something. Because apparently Iron Man is super fun to play as, and uh, if they just made a cool Iron Man game like Anthem, like just make it like Anthem but with Iron Man and actually good, then maybe they'd have something good. But yeah, right now it's just in this weird limbo state between story based but not really story based, and then like trying to be a looter shooter, but obviously failing at everything that makes looter shooters enticing to begin with.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a bad look.
Yeah, that's the thing is the characters on their own are fun to play as. There's just nothing to do with them.
Mhm.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, and none of them play different enough to make all of the same situations feel different, is my
Yeah.
understanding.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I like playing as Kate Bishop and I like playing as Iron Man. But when you fire an arrow as Kate Bishop and when you fire a repulsor blast as Iron Man, they don't even feel that different. In fact, the reticle is the exact same reticle for both.
Mhm.
It's like
Yeah.
the targeting reticle is the same. And I just think it's like why and then or Captain America when you throw his shield or I don't know what other range or Kamala Khan when you use her like stretchy arm power.
Mhm.
It's just there's good characters in here that each of them I would like to play as them on their own, but when you have a team up game, they don't do enough different. Like if you gave me an Iron Man game with this Iron Man, or a Captain America game with this Cap, or a Hawkeye game with this Kate Bishop, those could be great games. It's just the level design and the fact that these characters feel. So the only thing that makes them feel different is their movement. Like when you play as Hulk, you feel like this big lumbering, giant, which is different from when you play as Kamala Khan, who's like a teenage girl. So I will give him that. The movement at least is somewhat varied. But then when Iron Man puts on his like Hulkbuster armor and his power up, he moves just like Hulk does.
Mhm.
It's like they just took the same animations and just put it onto that skin.
Yeah.
No. I hope it can turn it around. Just if it is gonna bomb and they just cancel support, at least give me my Spider-Man DLC first, and then you can do whatever you want. Just give me
After that,
Spider-Man.
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
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 All right. Well, with that, that brings us to the end of our show.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thanks so much for listening. Hopefully we'll have Mod back next time. He is in the middle of prepping for his independent study, his sort of his baby, so to speak. So he's really busy doing
Oh, he's
that.
a short film, for those of you who don't know.
Yeah, no, he's making a short film that he has, I presume, written and produced and everything. So yeah, he's super busy with that. And I'm really excited for him. It's a really good opportunity. And hopefully everything goes smoothly. Sawyer's on the shoot, so at least one of the departments is in safe hands. But yeah, I think that is it. Sawyer, would you run down the social
Oh,
medias and everything for us? Oh, wait,
uh,
Caleb's got something.
as a follow up to the whole Xbox Game Pass speculation, uh, Square Enix did tweet out, I must have missed it, that there will be coming to Xbox Game Pass Final Fantasy 12.
Oh, okay.
So that's what that tweet
Yeah.
was about.
Yeah,
Was it-
FF games coming to Game Pass is not surprising.
Yup.
So
Still no
yeah.
Crisis
Sorry,
Core. There's still hope for tomorrow. We'll see.
Yeah, no. Tomorrow is when the FF7 concert that has all this speculation around it is. So
Right.
we'll see. Yeah, Sawyer, whenever you're ready, you can knock off the social medias.
Sure. So you can find us on Twitter at Castcate, at CASTCATE because of our old handle, but you can find us just by searching for the Lab Rats Entertainment Podcast. And you can find us on Instagram at the Lab Rats Podcast. We post on Twitter fairly more often than we do on Instagram. And you will get a notification on Twitter every time a new episode goes live on Podbean. And in addition to Podbean, you can also find us on Twitch, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, and YouTube.
All right, great. I think that is it. I did want to say that next week is a busy games week for me because we have Persona 5 Strikers early
yeah.
access for the digital deluxe edition, which I got, starts on the 18th. And then the Guilty Gear Strive beta, a fighting game I'm really excited for, is also happening then. And I get like a day early access to the beta for pre-ordering it. So that's
Ooh.
what I did. So I'm probably going to be streaming some of the Strive beta, and I don't know what the permissions are going to be for the early access on Persona, because Atlas seems like they're not against people streaming Persona, but they are against streaming it early, and they don't like spoilers. So we'll see if I play that on stream or not. If not, I'll definitely. Persona Strikers is going to be the game that I probably finish the fastest because it's the one that I'm probably the most excited for in the immediate future. And then other games will come after that, I'm sure. So yeah, look forward to some of that. That'll go up on the Lab Rats Twitter and everything like that, so you can check that out. Yeah, do you guys have anything else you wanted to plug?
Don't forget that after this month, Mario is no more.
Yes. So if you really want to buy the Mario collection, then you got to do it at before March 31st, I think. Or is it March 1st?
I would do it before March 1st, just in case.
Yeah, actually, I'll check to confirm. Super Mario 3D All Stars
Say goodbye to
and
Mario. Mario is no more.
end date. Here we go. March 31st. Okay. Now, we all say that, but they're gonna sell them back again.
Yeah, it's going to be a bigger collection, I bet you.
I don't know if it's gonna be a bigger collection. I think what happens is that they just split the 3 games for $20 a piece and just put them on the store.
Fair.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll get another physical release, but I could see them being just like split up and then put on the
Yeah.
eShop.
That
'Cause-
definitely seems like a Nintendo thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'd buy Galaxy for $20. I think that's reasonable. But
Yeah.
yeah.
As long as maybe we get Galaxy 2. Like, I mean, I kind of want that, but I don't think we'll get it.
Yeah.
I like it, but we won't get it.
Yeah, no, I keep saying, I want the Zelda 2000s trilogy with Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and Skyward Sword, even though technically Skyward Sword came out in 2011, but I count it as part of the 2000s Zelda era. I want that, but I know I'm not going to get it this year.
This would be the year to do it.
It would be the year to do it, so they should, but they're not going to. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, go ahead.
I will say, be on the lookout. We don't know, but we may or may not have recorded a certain special
Yes.
that may or may not be on our platform, but it may be on another.
Yeah, no, and there will be information about that. We'll see. It might not even be on the podcast feed, which would be
Mhm.
pretty crazy. So yeah, be on the lookout for that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll definitely be tweeting that one out.
yeah, no, definitely. You'll know about it. It just might not pop up in your Apple Podcasts feed.
Yes.
That's all we're saying. All right, but with that, I think that's everything we had
Yep.
to say. So, bye.
Bye.